They say serving your country is the highest form of honor. I used to believe that until I learned that while I was risking my life overseas, the woman I trusted most was quietly dismantling everything we had built together. My name is Michael Reed, 37 years old, Sergeant First Class in the United States Army. I had just crossed the halfway mark of my third deployment when my life back home started falling apart piece by piece in ways I couldn't even imagine. It began with a phone call from my bank. Routine, they said. Just a verification for an unusual wire transfer. I assumed it was a mistake, maybe a system error. I gave them the details they asked for and hung up without thinking twice. It wasn't until the second call, 2 days later, a different bank, a different account, that the first thread of unease pulled loose in my gut. When I finally found a stable connection and logged into my online banking, my hands went cold. The savings account we had built together drained. The house we had bought before my second deployment mortgaged again without my signature. My retirement fund, something I had started putting money into straight out of basic training, half of it moved, redirected into an account I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe fraud. Maybe identity theft. Maybe something explainable. I emailed Jenna, my wife, thinking she would know something, thinking she would calm the rising panic clawing at the back of my throat. Her reply was short, colder than the desert nights outside my tent. Things change, Mike. I had to do what was best for me. No explanation. No apology. No shame. In that moment, sitting alone on the edge of my bunk, the whine of generators in the distance and sand caking every seam of my uniform, I realized something brutal and undeniable. While I fought to protect everything we loved, she had fought to take it all for herself. And she thought, being halfway across the world, there was nothing I could do about it. She was wrong. I closed my laptop slowly, my hands steady now, my mind sharper than it had been in months. This wasn't just about betrayal. This wasn't just about money. This was about fighting a new kind of war, a war Jenna had started, but one I would finish. And when it was over, I wouldn't just take back what she stole. I would take back my life. The next morning, before the sun had even risen over the endless expanse of desert, I was sitting at a battered metal desk in the corner of our outpost's communications tent, staring at my laptop screen like it held the key to everything. Around me, the sounds of boots shuffling, coffee brewing, and orders being barked over static-filled radios filled the air, but I heard none of it. My world had shrunk down to a single, burning focus, finding out exactly how deep Jenna's betrayal ran. I started by pulling every financial statement I could access, every transaction, every balance update. At first, the pattern looked random, like a scatter of numbers across different accounts. But as I dug deeper, it became clear. She had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Small withdrawals hidden in everyday expenses. Transfers routed through secondary accounts. A slow bleed, almost surgical, designed to avoid detection until it was too late. There were hotel charges in cities she had no reason to visit. Jewelry store receipts for items I had never seen. Even a series of payments to a private post office box, something she had apparently opened without my knowledge. Every new discovery was a fresh cut, a reminder that while I fought in a war zone, Jenna had been fighting her own battle back home against me. I could have let anger take over. Could have fired off a dozen furious emails, made reckless calls, demanded answers she wouldn't give. But rage wasn't going to win this fight. I knew that better than anyone. You don't survive deployment by rushing blindly into the first ambush you see. You survive by gathering intelligence, by making every move count, by knowing when to wait and when to strike. So I documented everything. Screenshots, PDFs, a folder labeled simply Home Front that grew heavier with each passing hour. Every receipt was a bullet, every transfer a loaded magazine. I wasn't just preparing to confront her. I was building a case, airtight, undeniable, devastating. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing how completely I had missed the signs. How many late-night phone calls she had brushed off. How many short, distracted conversations I had let slide because I was tired, or busy, or convinced we were strong enough to survive anything. But love, I realized, doesn't survive on good intentions alone. It survives on honesty, on loyalty, on the kind of small, invisible sacrifices that no one writes about, the ones she had long since stopped making. As I sat there, watching the sun climb higher over the horizon and turn the desert sky to a brilliant, burning gold, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't just survive this. I would win. I would take back everything she tried to steal, my future, my dignity, my life. And when it was over, she would realize too late what she had truly lost. Because a man who has survived war doesn't break easily. He rebuilds. Stronger. Smarter. and more dangerous than ever. By the time my shift ended that night, the home front folder was thick with evidence. Every number, every hidden transaction, every whisper of betrayal Jenna had tried to bury, all laid bare. But I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. Wars are rarely won by one man standing by himself. They're won by alliances, by finding the right people to have your back when the world turns against you. And I knew exactly who to call. His name was David Lorne, an old friend from my early days in the army who had traded fatigues for a law degree. David had built a reputation back home for being a ruthless advocate, especially for military families who found themselves blindsided by betrayal. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year, but when I sent a short, coded message asking for help, he replied within minutes. We set up a video call for the next morning, me huddled in a dusty, dim-lit corner of the communications tent, him sitting in a clean, book-lined office thousands of miles away. The connection was grainy, the audio cutting in and out, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the fire in David's eyes when I laid out what had happened. You're not just dealing with a bad divorce, Mike, he said, his voice sharp and sure. You're looking at fraud, theft, maybe even criminal conspiracy if she involved anyone else. He paused, leaning forward until his face filled the screen. But here's the good news. You have the evidence. You have the law on your side. And you have me. Together, we started building the next phase of the plan. David instructed me to authorize a financial audit through the bank, locking Jenna out of any further access to shared accounts. He drafted letters to the mortgage company to place a hold on the property, preventing her from selling or refinancing without my explicit consent. He even flagged my military pension to make sure it couldn't be touched without a formal court order. Every move was deliberate. Every step designed not to provoke, but to corner. Let her feel safe. Let her think she had one. Because people get careless when they believe the battle is over. As the strategy unfolded, I felt a shift inside me. This wasn't just damage control anymore. This was a counterattack. I wasn't chasing Jenna out of desperation or heartbreak. I was reclaiming what was mine, legally, methodically, with the same precision I would use clearing a building or mapping out a mission. And when the time came, she wouldn't even see it coming until it was far too late. Before we ended the call, David said something that stuck with me long after I closed my laptop and stepped back into the searing desert sunlight. You fought for your country, Mike. Now it's time to fight for yourself. I nodded, feeling a calm settle over me, deeper and stronger than any anger could have ever provided. Because for the first time since that call from the bank, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was moving forward. And I wasn't about to stop. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my deployment, not because of the missions or the heat or the constant threat of enemy fire, but because of the battle raging silently back home, the one only I could fight. Every free moment, every spare minute between shifts and patrols I used to dig deeper. And the deeper I went, the uglier the truth became. Through David's network of contacts, we hired a private investigator, a retired police officer named Sam Cortez, a man who knew how to find answers without making noise. Within days, Sam started feeding me information Jenna never intended me to see. She hadn't just drained our accounts and mortgaged the house. She had started living a whole new life with someone else. His name was Eric Dawson. Younger, flashier, reckless. A man who had moved into my home less than a month after my boots hit foreign soil. Sam sent me photos, grainy at first, but clear enough. Eric driving my truck, sitting at my dining room table, even walking my dog. The same dog Jenna had sworn she couldn't handle alone. Every image was a punch to the gut. But I didn't flinch. Not anymore. I had already bled out my anger. What remained now was something colder. Something sharper. Worse yet, Jenna wasn't just planning to live off what she stole. She was trying to erase me entirely. Sam uncovered documents filed quietly with the local courts. Motions to sell the house outright, to dissolve joint property, to cash out retirement accounts citing abandonment due to military deployment. She thought that with enough paperwork and enough distance, she could rewrite the story. Poor abandoned wife, left to fend for herself, entitled to everything. But stories built on lies have a way of collapsing when you shine the right light on them. Every piece of evidence Sam gathered was forwarded straight to David, who meticulously wove it into the growing legal case. Jenna thought she was winning because she mistook my silence for defeat. She didn't realize I was watching. I was documenting. I was preparing. And every move she made tightened the noose she didn't even know was there. There were nights when the weight of it all nearly crushed me. Sitting alone in the stifling heat, sand grinding between my teeth. the ache of betrayal gnawing at my ribs like a physical wound. But those nights passed. They had to, because survival wasn't optional. It never had been. Whether on the battlefield or in a courtroom, the rule was the same. Adapt, endure, overcome. Jenna might have stolen my money, my home, even the life we had once dreamed of together. But what she couldn't steal was the man I had become through every hard mile of dirt and blood and fire. And that man was coming back. Not broken, not bitter, but ready. Ready to take it all back. By the time my deployment entered its final months, the legal trap was nearly complete. Every account Jenna had touched was flagged. Every fraudulent transaction she initiated was traced. David filed motions with the court to freeze all shared assets pending investigation. Quietly, methodically, we were pulling the ground out from under her feet, and she didn't even know it yet. The first blow landed with a simple, sterile letter from the bank. All joint accounts were frozen, effective immediately. No withdrawals, no transfers, no lifelines. Jenna must have felt it like a slap. Suddenly cut off from the easy money she thought would keep fueling her new life with Eric. But there was nothing she could do. Every financial institution involved had been alerted to potential fraud linked directly to her social security number and signature. They were watching now, and so was I. The second blow came when the mortgage company called. Thanks to the evidence Sam had gathered, David had filed a restraining order against the sale of the house. Jenna had been mid-negotiation with a shady cash buyer when the deal was abruptly halted. She had counted on slipping the house out from under me, pocketing the proceeds before I even touched American soil again. Instead, she watched the opportunity vanish like smoke. The third blow was more personal. Through legal channels, David filed a motion for exclusive possession of the property, citing abandonment, fraud, and misuse of marital assets. If granted, it would mean Jenna and her new boyfriend would be legally required to vacate the home I had worked and bled for, before I even stepped off the plane. No drama, no confrontation, just a court order and a deadline. Every move Jenna made in the months before had been reckless, arrogant. She had moved too fast, left too many fingerprints. Now, each of those mistakes was coming back to haunt her. And the best part? I hadn't said a word to her. No angry messages, no threats, no warnings. I had let her write her own downfall, one selfish decision at a time. There were moments, late at night under the relentless hum of the desert sky, when I thought about what it would feel like to finally confront her. To lay everything out, to see the look on her face when she realized she had lost. But those were fleeting thoughts, because true victory wasn't about shouting or slamming doors. It wasn't about proving a point. True victory was walking away clean, with my future intact, with my dignity unbroken, and most importantly, with everything she thought she had stolen, returned to the man who had never stopped fighting for it. The battle wasn't over yet, but the tide had turned, and this time I was the one holding the high ground. The day I finally stepped off the plane and back onto American soil, the world felt different. Not just because of the jet lag, or the weight of a uniform that still smelled faintly of dust and diesel, but because I wasn't coming home to the life I had left behind. That life was gone, burned down by betrayal. But I wasn't stepping into the ashes with my head bowed. I was walking into the wreckage standing tall, ready to claim what was still mine. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway of my house, or what was supposed to be my house. The front yard was overgrown, the mailbox leaning awkwardly to one side. In the windows, the lights were off, but I knew Jenna and Eric had been there until recently. The court order had been delivered 2 weeks earlier. They had been given 72 hours to vacate the property, no exceptions. And from the looks of it, they had obeyed. Not out of respect, out of fear. Fear of what was coming if they didn't. I pushed open the front door with my own set of keys, the hinges creaking in protest. The house was stripped bare, furniture gone, decorations ripped from the walls. Even the old family photos were missing. Not that I wanted them anymore. It looked like a robbery had taken place, and in a way it had. But they hadn't taken everything. They had left behind the foundation, the bones, the part that mattered most. I walked room to room, my boots echoing in the empty space, Scout trotting silently at my side. The only thing Jenna hadn't been able to claim because she had never cared enough to fight for her. I opened the back door and stood there for a while, staring out over the battered fence line and the crooked tree where I had once hung a tire swing. Back when things were simpler, or at least when I believed they were. There was pain. Of course there was. But it was distant now, like a scar you barely notice until you run your fingers over it. The deeper feeling wasn't sorrow. It was clarity. This place, stripped of all the lies, was mine again. Not because I fought Jenna for it. Not because I chased her down. But because I stood my ground and refused to be erased. The next day, David and I sat across from Jenna and her lawyer in a sterile mediation room downtown. She barely looked at me, her face pale, her hands fidgeting with a cheap bracelet that looked out of place against the polished table. Her lawyer spoke for her, but the message was clear. Jenna wanted to settle. Quickly, quietly. She was willing to walk away from the house, the retirement accounts, even the pending fraud charges, if I agreed not to press criminal charges. David looked at me, waiting for my signal. I didn't hesitate. I nodded once. Because winning isn't always about burning everything to the ground. Sometimes winning is letting someone destroy themselves while you simply step back and let the pieces fall. An hour later, it was over. The house was mine. The savings and retirement funds were secure. The debt Jenna had tried to bury me under was hers to deal with alone. And me? I walked out of that building lighter than I had in years. No anger. No regrets. Just the simple, solid satisfaction of knowing that when everything collapsed, I hadn't. Jenna thought she could steal my life while I fought for my country. But all she really did was set the stage for me to build something stronger. Something she could never touch again. In the weeks after the settlement, life took on a strange new rhythm. For the first time in years, every decision, every breath, every mile I walked was mine alone. No compromises, no second-guessing. No hidden knives waiting behind polite smiles. Just me, Scout, and a life that, while battered and scarred, was mine to rebuild exactly how I wanted. I started small, fixing the house one project at a time, patching holes in the drywall Jenna had left behind in her hurried escape, repainting walls with colors I chose without anyone else's input, clearing the backyard of the junk and overgrowth, planting new grass with my own hands. Every nail driven, every coat of paint rolled was another quiet declaration. This is mine. I earned this. I survived this. Work was steady too. I took a position with a security consulting firm started by a couple of retired guys from my old unit. Long days, honest pay, no office politics or fake smiles. Just straight talk, clear missions, and the kind of loyalty you only find among people who have been through hell together and come out stronger for it. The money was good, but more importantly, the work gave me something I hadn't realized I'd lost: pride. A sense that I was building something again, not just surviving the aftermath of betrayal, but moving forward, brick by brick, on ground I had reclaimed with my own hands. I didn't rush into dating. That part of my life would come later when I was ready. When I could offer someone more than just the pieces left over after a storm. For now, it was enough to wake up each morning with the sun streaming through windows I had cleaned myself, Scout snoring gently at the foot of the bed, and the sound of nothing but peace filling the spaces where tension and resentment used to live. One evening, as I sat on the back porch with a cold beer in hand, watching Scout chase shadows across the freshly mowed lawn, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't haunted by what Jenna had done or what we had lost. Because in trying to destroy me, she had actually given me something priceless: a second chance. A clean break. A life free of hidden debts and hollow promises. Victory didn't look like standing over someone else's ruins. Victory looked like this. A simple evening. A quiet heart. A future that was mine to shape, no one else's. I leaned back in the old rocking chair, listening to the crickets stir in the dusk, and smiled. Not because I had taken everything back from Jenna, but because I had taken myself back. And that was a victory no one could ever steal. The seasons changed quietly that year. Summer faded into a soft, golden autumn, and with it the last traces of the life Jenna and I had once shared slipped away without ceremony. I didn't mark the anniversary of the divorce. I didn't dwell on the court battles, or the betrayals, or the long nights filled with doubt. They were part of my story, sure, but they weren't the ending. One afternoon, I came across an old box tucked away in the garage, full of memories I hadn't yet dealt with. Photos, wedding gifts, souvenirs from trips we had taken when life still felt simple. For a moment I hesitated, the past tugging at me like a hand on my sleeve. But instead of giving in, I quietly sorted through what mattered and what didn't. A few photos I kept, not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because those moments were real even if everything afterward wasn't. The rest I let go. I built a small fire in the backyard that evening. Nothing dramatic. No grand gestures. Just a quiet letting go. Paper curling into smoke. Broken promises dissolving into the cool autumn air. I watched the flames dance, Scout curled up beside me, and I felt lighter with every flicker of ash that rose into the darkening sky. That night, for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept without dreams. Life didn't turn into some perfect fairy tale after that. There were still hard days. Still moments when the past whispered at the edges of my mind. But those whispers grew quieter with time, drowned out by the laughter of new friends, the pride of new accomplishments, the steady, unshakable peace of knowing that everything I had now was built with my own hands, no illusions, no compromises, no debts. I wasn't the same man who had deployed years ago, full of trust and dreams and unspoken expectations. I was someone sharper now. Stronger. More grounded. She had stolen everything she could reach. But in trying to break me, she had handed me the blueprint to build something indestructible. And I did. Brick by brick. Day by day. Smile by hard-earned smile. Because real victory isn't just taking back what was stolen. It's becoming someone who no one can ever steal from again. If you've ever lost more than you thought you could survive. If you've ever had to rebuild from the ashes of something you thought would last forever. Know this, you are not alone. And you are stronger than the things that tried to break you. I'd love to hear your story, the battles you've fought, the victories you've claimed, no matter how quiet or hard-won they were. Drop a comment below and share your journey. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you believe in stories of resilience, strength, and rebuilding better than before, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because this is just one of many journeys we'll walk together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the past may shape us, but it never defines us.